Thanks, Adam. It's yeah, as I said, it's been a long journey to get me on the line. It's I think our first introduction personally was probably 6 or 7 years ago. I think was when we first crossed paths. You were working at WoodSolutions at the time, and I was doing something else. But yeah, my background is been in structural engineering pretty much my whole career, and then the last sort of 6 or 7 years, I've sort of really been focusing on the engineered wood product side of things. I've got a bit of a natural connection there to the timber industry through my father, actually. So that was what actually originally drew me into the industry. And I've been sort of active in it in the last sort of really focusing on the manufacturing side of things for the last 6 or so years. And now I currently sit at Timberlink inside their NeXTimber business, looking after cross-laminated timber and glue-laminated timber projects predominantly. Got a team of people working alongside me, helping deliver and execute projects. And we've been in operation for a year now. So it's been a pretty challenging first 12 months, but very rewarding nonetheless. So I'm operating in the capacity of sort of general manager, technical and sales. So out of market, but also delivering projects too.
It's amazing, man. So it's been 1 year in operation, but you've been there a little bit longer. Tell us about the journey. What was it like beforehand, and at the high level, what has the first year been like? And I think implicit in what you said before is quite humble, because you do have a really strong brand and great reputation already in the ANZ region.
Well, I've actually been with Timberlink for 3.5 years. So they approached me 3.5 years to look after the technical side of the NeXTimber business. It was a new journey for Timberlink. So Timberlink's been in as an organisation operating in the softwood manufacturing space for 12 or so years. We've actually acquired some pre-existing assets in Tasmania and South Australia, and focused predominantly on sawn softwood timber. They realised some time ago that they needed to diversify their offering, look at better ways to get more value out of the log and the resource that they had. Wood plastic composite is another part of the business that we've focused on, and that helps sort of certainly with that sustainability angle of the business, and how do we use that resource and that fibre a bit more effectively to get value from. But what they brought me onto for 3 years ago was to look after the NeXTimber business. So that whole first 2 years really for working at Timberlink was around getting our team match fit, getting them ready, getting systems and processes in place, and getting a lot of the testing and R&D underway. So when we did turn the actual machines on last year, we were in a position to sort of hit the ground running. So that was some good foresight by Timberlink, really, to sort of really invest in the people up front. We had sales engineers working within the business before we'd even made product. We had caddies working in the business, developing systems, testing systems, developing processes. So having the whole team come along the journey for those certainly through the infancy of getting a plant up and running, and seeing them sort of hit their straps now is absolutely been truly rewarding. It's probably one of the most rewarding things of the entire journey.
Yeah, that's incredible. And tell us a little bit more about the team and the culture building and the importance of processes and everything like that from the very start to actually set yourself up for success, and what are the dividends being paid off now from that?
Yeah, so as I said, we've been in operations we delivered our first project at the very, very start of this year. Is actually when the first truck actually left with cross-laminated timber product on it going into a project. And we've had some project successes for the last 9 months. We've delivered a Factory of the Future in South Australia, which people will be familiar with. That was probably a real flagship project for us, which is quite interesting because we were engaged in sort of early on with the client on that one, them knowing full well that we were getting a plant up and running. So as I said, like for us, it's about really taking people on the journey, like taking our customers on the journey. And so Factory of the Future is like one of our real successes this year, which we delivered a couple of months ago now. But we've been engaged in that process, in that project for a reasonable period of time prior. So working with the contractor and the consultants and during that process, and then knowing full well that
we're still in the process of commissioning equipment, getting a plant up and running, and bringing them on the journey was really paramount in actually us being able to deliver that. So having customers and clients that have the confidence to back you in those situations has been, ultimate paramount to our success really in the first sort of 12 months really. And then so that's developing relationships externally, but also developing relationships internally and getting team all singing from the same songbook has been absolutely critical. One thing we've been really intentional with when we've been sort of developing the team has been around, not necessarily having a sales and operational team focusing on their individual roles. Ultimately, the overall success of the project is going to be marked by us being able to deliver on time and in full. So it's no point having projects coming down the pipeline that we know we can't execute, or having projects coming down the pipeline and overburdening the operational team. It's about us all being on exactly the same page and making sure that the ultimate goal is getting the project out the door on time. And the sales team, even once the contract's been executed, they hang around that whole project life cycle from where to go. And myself particularly, I'm involved from the start to the finish, and now we've got sales, technical, and project execution all sitting under the one umbrella, and that's proved to be quite fruitful for us. So we'll continue to build on that. But at the end of the day, it's 100% a team game. There's absolutely no question about it, and there's no room for egos or anything like that. It's just get down and get it done.
Yeah, that's it. And as you said, it's all about getting product out the door and to on time, on site. But there's so much that goes into that, and there's so much information. So it's sort of like, how do you feed data, so to speak, from the factory, like where is a bottleneck that's produced all the way to the front end sales cycle to inform design? Do we have a well established path in the industry yet for that sort of thing, or is it, do you internally look at that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so our business model is, so we don't do engineering design in-house, and we've been abundantly clear on that. Like, that's something that that's not where we can offer the most value, is probably what we sort of where we see our strengths play. So our strengths are really in assisting the designers to make good design decisions initially, giving them some guidance and some recommendations and some limitations that they can work within, or some parameters they can work within for them to actually complete the design. The best value that we can offer is giving that upfront advice. We'll bring the caddies into the conversation quite early and start to look at penalisation, really even when the design's not even that well developed. But really completing that life cycle of input, and then we'll actually take the design and we'll do all the documentation in Melbourne here, and then we'll send that to the factory. But we also try and get the input from the factory operationally as we're actually doing the actual documentation. So we're asking them, based on the complexity you're seeing in front of you here, how long do you think this is going to do? What do you think this is going to do? The production program, and so we've got quite a really good feedback loop there, and it's something that we've been consciously building over the last sort of 3 to 6 months, and something we'll continue to build. But that's where the connectivity between the sort of sales activities and the operational activities and the project execution deliveries are really important. And I won't lie, like there's been challenges. We've been only in operation really for 12 months, and we haven't got everything right. But one thing we are is really open-minded to changing and improving things. So that's one of the things that sort of keeps you coming back for more, is like, how can I do this better next time? How have I contributed to this thing not going as successfully as what it could have done? And that's that whole mentality of taking accountability for your involvement in the process. So and we're continue to sort of improve on that capability as we mature as a business.
Yep. It's amazing, and it's taking on accountability is sometimes not just in the timber industry, but just in construction. It's not always, so it's amazing to have your reputation as part of that on projects, and putting your hand up when lessons can be learned. So is that a unique culture that you're building there?
Oh, I don't think it's unique. I think it comes down to the individuals more than anything. Every industry's got it. Every industry's got the ability to do it. It's something that's probably ingrained in myself and my team directly, that we always look at things like that. Like, as I said, it's when things don't go well, it's the first thing you should be doing is looking in the mirror and saying, well, what did I do to contribute to that? What can I do differently next time? And that's the way that all businesses really should be operating, in my view. But I've been involved in construction for it's my whole adult career, so probably the best part of 20 years, really. Giving away my age now, but so consulting and engineering design and working with contractors and things like that. It can be a pretty challenging space to work. Like, you're talking reasonable amounts of money that people are investing up front, and you don't want to make errors, but it's about not shying away from them, owning them, communicating. Communication can't be underestimated, I think.
Yeah, totally. So for a project to be successful, what are the things that maybe from 2 points of view? One is like from a factory's point of view, if someone's looking at throughput, how do you achieve that? And then maybe they're linked, but from a project point of view as well, if you're influencing early, what are the things you're looking at for project success?
Yeah, well, I mean, success is an interesting metric. It's we'll probably get a little bit philosophical here, Adam, but I don't want to go down that
That's
path.
great.
But I suppose the question is, like, how do you actually define success? And success may look different for each different project. Like this, one project comes to mind, I'm thinking of right now, which was ultimately at the end of it was a very successful project because it went together absolutely seamlessly. But it was a real nightmare. It was a real nightmare. So I think the things that we're looking for a project, if we actually to say, okay, what would success look like for us? It'd be something that we can produce at a high volume, at a high rate, really improve our manufacturing throughput is probably one thing we would probably measure ourselves on, because ultimately that's going to come down to the profitability of the project for us. So if we're looking at that from those sort of metrics point of view, the things that we look at are there not too many different varieties of panels in the project? Like, are we trying to make similar billets repeatedly? So we're trying to get a lot of repetition in there. And then when it comes down to connections and joints and things like that, how many operations can we do from the single side of the panel? Like, ideally, we do all of them from one side. And panel flipping is probably the last one. So trying to avoid as many times we have to actually flip a panel over to either do additional operations to it, or flip it over to go and apply some vapor permeable membrane or some other value add items that we might be including in the process. So those are probably the two things, and the things that we probably look at mostly from a design perspective, and what we try to try and feed that back into the design is even things like, okay, what sort of joints are we actually looking at doing on this project? Are we doing lap joints? And yes, we are doing lap joints. Okay, well, how wide are we making those? Can we make those a little bit narrower? Because that'll reduce the amount of waste. Or how many passes it needs to take us on the sand to actually cut those joints? Spline plate's a better option. Like, those are the sort of design decisions that we sort of tease out those questions with the contractor. But a lot of those decisions aren't necessarily made by us either. So some of the decisions aren't even made by the head contractor. They actually may be made by the installer as to what their preferences are. And there may be a whole host of different reasons as to why they might choose one over the other. There may be engineering reasons as to why they choose. But I think it's more about asking the questions and asking the right questions, and then getting to a resolution that is somewhat sensible. It might not, and there may be instances where you can't have a preferred connection for whatever reason, engineering reason or whatever, but you may not need to apply it everywhere. So the days where you do standard details completely over the job, Is that really necessary? What's the value in doing that? Those are the sort of questions that you really need to sort of tease out through that design process.
And does, for that, because is there mutual incentive to actually drive the manufacturing throughput? I mean, does that feed back and inform and reduce costs at the end of the day for the project as well, for them, for their hip pocket? Because it is one of those things. It's sort of like everyone incentivized to reduce costs, because that's the end of the day, the thing that's probably the biggest accelerator up.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest incentive is, like, at the end of the day, we're trying to, in most instances, operating sort of on a just-in-time model where we possibly can. There's times where you might not be able to because of you may be delivering to storage or things like that. But where you are delivering on a just-in-time basis, certainty around delivery is probably the most important thing for a contractor. So if you can rationalize the design a little bit and improve the throughput through the factory, and then be able to be somewhat certain around when you're actually going to be able to finally execute the delivery of that job to the actual customer at the end of the day, that's got an intrinsic value to them. So when you have projects that are very complicated or complex, to whether they be a machine or manufacturer or whatever it is, you're just creating a high level of uncertainty there, which means, okay, well, what do we need to do now? Do we need to, we need to factor in more time when we're actually going to be able to deliver it to you? Do we need to delay delivering it to you? So there's some things there that are probably a little bit nuanced, which on the surface aren't necessarily really super clear as to what the actual value is. But for us, it's about as much throughput as we can, because if we're delaying manufacturing or slowing down production because of projects, then there's an inherent lost opportunity there for us. So in an abundant market with a heap of projects floating around, you want to be able to produce and process as many projects as you possibly can. But if you've got projects that are very, very slow to produce and slowing down throughput and that, then there's lost opportunity there that you're leaving on the table. So that's why there's a priority for us to sort of get them through as fast as what we possibly can.
Yeah. And, zooming on that, one of the things you mentioned there is like delaying projects and like the implications that has if you've got certainty on a shift, even for you or even for the contractor, and that has to change and all of that. Is that where a lot of the, where some of the, I guess, the costs are for you guys, but also for the project teams? And maybe it's something that's new to some teams, like coming into mass timber and not realizing that you need to freeze the specification or the drawings and stuff like that. I remember when I joined XLAM, I remember one of the first documents I read was you wrote, if you don't mind me sharing this, you wrote, it was about one of their design guides, and like if you move if it moves, it's sort of like a plane ticket where, do you maybe share that
I don't
analogy?
think I wrote that.
Someone said
I
it
think
was you.
that was actually Gary Caulfield's analogy. Actually, was about the plane ticket analogy.
Gotcha.
I think I was just the guy on the end of the keyboard pulling that together. I actually think Peter Evans actually pulled that whole document together, to be quite frank. But certainly that
Do you want
the
to maybe elaborate on the analogy in any
yeah, I
case,
will.
and
So
if it's relevant?
the analogy that was that we discussed quite readily in my past career was that somewhat manufacturing is somewhat like a plane ticket. Like the plane is leaving, whether you're on it or not. And if you miss your flight, you're gonna need to rebook another ticket, but you're not going to get a refund for your ticket. Essentially, is what it was. So I think that sort of held true back then. We don't tend to operate like that, because and that's probably based on some of my past experiences that you can work with the best of intentions to have documentation and drawings ready at a particular point in time, but the reality is that they never are. Like, they always drift. And so to be completely rigid around some of those dates, particularly when you're tendering on a package that may only be 80% complete, is quite challenging. And so we don't necessarily operate exactly like that. But what we will do is we'll give an indicative manufacturing time as to when the actual project's is actually started. So when we actually get engaged, we'll say, okay, this is you want it on this date, and we actually work back from that day and say, well, based on that, we actually need your drawings finalised and signed off by this date. But that's where we'll lean in and we'll try and really drag it through to actually get it to a point where we can actually start to work with it. Because there's a little value of us sitting on our hands, just sitting there waiting for it to be ready. Like it's as I said, for us, it's about getting the project through the manufacturing cycle. And if we have to lean in a little bit to drag it through, then that's what we'll do. Because ultimately, as I said before, it's about the customer and being able to deliver to them in a time frame that's suitable for their construction site. But they also need to understand and appreciate that we can't just wait forever. Like there's a point in time where we've actually got to drop the hammer and make something. Because we can't just sit there doing nothing. Because the most expensive factory you'll have is one that's sitting there not doing anything.
That's it, 100% true. And I mean, one of the holy grails for some is like if there is some commodity type specification or modularity or whatever it might be, where when there is an empty shift, you can just pump out a certain type of panel, which adds a lot of value to some certain projects. I mean, do you see things evolving in that direction? And it's been a holy grail, but it's yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the commoditizing of CLT particularly is that the biggest challenge with that is that the elements that you're producing are so big and can be potentially so thick that you might be looking to process something that's 400 millimeters in thickness. Well, not everybody's going to have a saw around that's going to be able to cut a 400 millimeter thick panel, or even anything over sort of 100 millimeters becomes a bit of a struggle. But without having to flip it over and do something else to it. I think the one unique value proposition that we have as an organisation, though, is that our actual manufacturing facility is combined, and so we actually have the opportunity to produce glulam and cross-laminated timber on the same manufacturing line. So in periods where we may not be working on a project, we can start to build inventory for glulam, for example, or do some other bits and pieces, or do some R&D and things like that. So that's where we have the ability to sort of flex in our production capability. We're in a bit of a unique position like that. But also, it also can work against you too, because when you're working through a project, you've still got commitments to produce glulam as well. So trying to work those two into the same equation can be a little bit challenging. But yeah, but I'm certainly on the lookout for some opportunities to commoditize probably some of those thinner CLT elements where we can. I think there's some opportunities there, but yeah, it's still going to take a bit of work.
Yeah. Amazing, man. So, we're getting to the end of the podcast. So tell us about what you see as the future of our industry. What are the big needle movers? What are the big risks on the horizon? Anything like that. So just an open question for you.
Yeah, well, I think if we look at, you sort of put me on the spot here a little bit, Adam, but that's all part of the game, I suppose.
It is.
But
not everyone
I
you
think
can put on the spot, but you can, some guests you can sort of just like go with it, and you're one of them.
Oh, thanks, mate. I appreciate that. I think if we look at what the US market's done, I think we've seen a lot of growth in the US market, and I think their latest stats are that they're tipping sort of double the growth in the next 5 years. So that market there is on sort of the upward trajectory, and I would like to see something like that happen in the Australian and New Zealand context as well. I think what's going to need to move to change that's probably going to be a bit of an overhaul with some of our NCC DDS requirements or compliance codes there. So I think that's going to be one of the if we can get some changes in there, particularly around sort of maybe some prescriptive fire performance, I think that'll be one thing that'll probably shift the needle a little bit. So I'm hopeful that we can get some traction in that space, and we're working in the background with some things there with sort of Andrew Dunn and that. So hopefully we can get that to move. I think the other thing too is, and something that you've been working on feverishly in the background, Adam, I know, is really making design a lot more accessible to the generalists out there. So not being so reliant on only a few designers to be able to design in timber. I think making it a bit more accessible with design tools like CFD Toolbox is a great initiative and a great example, and something that the industry's really been crying out for a long time. So that's another thing. But the other thing too, I think, is we're seeing a lot more collaboration more broadly across the industry. As I said, I've been in the industry for sort of maybe 6-7 years or thereabouts, sort of particularly in this timber space, and that's one thing I've always been a big advocate for is around knowledge sharing, lessons learned, and really just working with each other a lot more collaboratively. And I've seen a lot of it, and I think it's even changed a lot in the last sort of 5 years particularly. And that's the one thing that I find so welcoming and embracing about this actual sector itself is the amount that people are willing to share, not only from an engineerable products point of view. We're starting to see it within our business here now with sort of safety and things like that, talking to our competitors and what they're doing from a safety angle, sustainability, the list sort of goes on. So they're probably the three big things that I think are really going to move the needle a bit. You and I have spoken at length about a number of things, and one thing we've always said, which has really resonated with me, is really around growing the pie. And a rising tide raises all ships, as they say. And so that's one thing that I'd like that to be my legacy, would be to see this industry grow and flourish and become bigger and better and healthier than what it was when I picked up. So that's where I hope it goes.
Likewise, Jeremy. What an amazing answer as the second last episode on the Timber Talks. If people want to find out more about yourself, they want to get in touch for any projects, where should they go?
Well, you can jump on LinkedIn. You can find me at LinkedIn. My phone always rings. But yeah, just reach out to me at Timberlink or NeXTimber, and more than happy to talk about whatever it is that people want to talk about. It's I'm pretty open, pretty happy to share my knowledge and understanding of my view on things. So by all means, reach out and get in touch.